Hello, hi, namaste and vanakkam. I'm Sushmita, and in this video I'm going to tell you about the importance of the breath within the context of the Ashtanga Vinyasa method, which is kind of a branch from the Hatha Yoga tradition. So the breath is something that we have with us from the minute we're born till the minute we die, and it's something that is so intimately with us that if we don't have it, we know we're actually dead. So the breath is really the life force, and in Sanskrit it's called Prana, that moves through the Chitta, or the mind-body field. So in Sanskrit we don't necessarily use technical terms that perfectly translate into the English language, but the Chitta can be viewed as the mind field, or just a blank slate of sensations and fluctuations that then get influenced by the thread of the breath. So the prana and the chitta are something like two wings of a bird. When the prana or the breath is constricted, then the chitta or the mind becomes constricted and tense and fraught with worry and anxiety and all of these types of things. Have you ever been in a situation, maybe it's before a test or likely before an interview, when you notice that you're breathing extremely shallowly, like there's this anxiety that's being created in the body, and you notice that your mind correspondingly becomes extremely tense and constricted and labored, and then you notice that your body is hunched over and you can't really sit up straight, open your heart, lift your sternum and be just more receptive to the moment. This is the influence of the prana and the chitta over our mind-body complex. And so by really working with the breath, by learning to control the breath, we can ultimately break this mental conditioning that we have developed for years and years and years. And the mental conditioning is things like thought patterns or things we say to ourselves repeatedly. Like, for example, I just told myself I'm really bad at maths for most of my life. And this became this sort of calcified thing that just got stuck in my head, and I was unable to break it for the longest time. And then I realized, when I think of those thoughts, when I really get locked in and identified with this belief, what I have access to at any moment is my breath. And so by really increasing and allowing the breath to move without constriction between my heart and my brain, I can sort of send this signal to my brain that we're not going to be eaten by a lion, it's just a maths test. And then I start to work with the breath to calm this mental calcification and come back into the body, come back into just the here and now, the physical body, and break this mental conditioning. And so ultimately, what this leads to is space. Space is really just nirodha in Sanskrit. It's the element of space. It's the element of openness, of naturalness, of freedom, of being able to sit without feeling constriction. And this is really what moving the breath without obstruction does in the body. And the way to do that without constricting and going back into our habitual ways of mental conditioning is to work with an asana practice. When we work with the asana practice, like just a set of postures, and we learn to do this ritualistic way of every day in the morning for 40 minutes to an hour, I'm going to do this ritual, this sacred dance of postures, where the breath will really lead the movement. The breath will rhythmically move into these parts of the body, all the way from my fingertips down to my toes. Then I really quickly realized that this is the way that I can move the breath without obstruction, and not just form and create space in different parts of my bodies, but also to sustain that space. Sustain and amplify the space, or the natural sense of opening that comes from practicing something as intense as a Ashtanga practice. And then what happens, is the body becomes this kind of wind instrument. The wind instrument with the breath, and each of these sensations are what you use to play harmonies. And so when you're feeling yourself within the state of the asana, when you're feeling yourself in something as simple as a downward dog, you know that you can push your hips way further back. You know you can try and bring your heels down to the floor, and you never quite reach that goal. But through the instrument of the breath, you're really just playing with the sensations, using this body as a field, and you're learning to go deeper because it's just a ritualistic dance. It's just this kind of breath moving rhythmically through the structure, through this physical structure of the asana. And that's really all there is to it. And coming back to the single principle, the one thing, if I can give you, it's to link up the breath with the movement. Linking the breath with the movement involves this kind of mind quietening down through all of these distractions that come up automatically when you start to practice. The mind follows the clarity or the pathway that the breath decides. And when the breath decides this pathway through the body, there is this sense of precision, this sense of clarity, and the mind does not have this space to really go into any distracting thoughts. Even this morning, as I was practicing, I was thinking about this speech, I was thinking about making this thing, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be so nervous. And then I realized I needed to just come back and follow the direction that my breath has habitually been used to within the pathways of my bodies, the nadis in my bodies. And so when I link the movement to the breath, I get out of my thinking mind that's just rationalizing and thinking, and I come into something as simple and as direct and immediate as the breath. And that's really such an important tool that we can all use, right, in our daily lives. And that's why I think there's the power of a personal practice. It's not someone else's practice that someone teaches you and then tells you this is exactly what you must do every day. These serve as a structure and a guideline for us to not just do whatever we want and do something different every day, but the power of a personal practice is that it has the potency to every day almost give us a chance to rediscover this thing from within, to rediscover the benefits, rediscover the practice just from coming on the mat, trying to work with our minds, trying to use the breath, trying to direct the breath within the structure of the body, and to rediscover ourselves. When all those thoughts that define us just melt away, what remains? It's something like if you were to look at it like a big tank and everything were to just settle down, then the thing that remains, the clear, pristine, absolutely free sense of flowing of the water, that freedom is us. And the power of a personal practice helps us relate to this sense of freedom, relate to this sense of clarity by using the breath. And so next time you get on the mat, do remember to use your breath, to deepen your breath, to liberate your breath, and to allow it to move through all the crevices in your body, because this is an immediate tool that you can use every single day. Namaste.